Welcome back to The Intentional Workplace, a podcast where we spend 15 minutes each week to talk about everything HR to improve your business. And I'm Maria Williams.
I'm Jacob Stone.
And this week we're talking about high performer or burnout waiting to happen. And we're going to dive into high performers in the workplace, how to spot burnout amongst the high performers or any performers, and what to do about burnout. So burnout is a hot topic and one that I'm sure most people that are listening are know how that feels to feel burnt out in a role, and we'll dive into that today. So one thing that I just want to kick us off with is when you think about top performers in an organization, they're usually the ones that will just say yes to most things and get the work done and get the work done well. And sometimes when that happens, no one really questions, how are they feeling? Are they, what is the impact that they have of the work that they're producing? And everything usually just kind of gets thrown at them. And one thing that I've noticed is it burnout for high performers doesn't usually look like failure. Like they're still getting the work done that needs to get done, and sometimes even going above. But in the background, they're struggling. And that only really shows if the manager or someone else kind of digs in and checks in on them. One sign sometimes that I see is that the energy level drops. So, like, the work gets done and the output is there, but maybe they're not raising their hand for, with new ideas, or raising their hand for extra project work or something like that. It's kind of like they're getting the work done and it's done well, but that energy kind of drops. So that's kind of one thing that I just wanted to start us off with.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that too is energy levels for sure. The other aspect to look for is irritability. I think that's one of the tall tale signs is you get this guy that's doing really well, and all of a sudden he's you know, really short tempered or he gets really annoyed or, his emotions towards whatever the work is has changed. And again, that can get into more personal life stuff. That can be a whole manner of different things. But if he's real, if generally speaking, if that worker is performing at a high level consistently, and then all of a sudden you progressively see this mood change or this demeanor, if you will, that's generally a sign of, wait a minute, there's something else going on, and what can we do? I think the other thing that we need to do is define what burnout is. Um, I There's this misconception of, well, I just don't want to do it anymore. I must be burned out. That's certainly one aspect of it, but I think when we talk about career burnout or you know performance burnout, it's more than just I don't want to do it. I think that it's something that has formed and snowballed into this thing that is not only just affects that one person, but affects the whole team in general. And it goes back to, I think we talked about it in episode 3 or 4, when it comes to culture and um, the toxicity that an in-person workplace the can have. It can The catalyst of that can just be that one individual. If you have a person that's facing and trying to work through burnout and doesn't have an outlet for it, um, that can spread really quickly, and that can just affect everything from production to mood to revenue to everything. So I think, for this topic, when we're talking about burnout, it's not just so much, oh, I'm annoyed, I don't want to like do this meeting, or I don't want to do this one report. I think it's the bigger scope of, I am emotionally and intellectually worn down. I have given it everything that I have and I don't see an end in sight, and I got this, gloom hanging over me of what do I do now, and I feel stuck. So keeping that in mind, um, what do you see when that leadership can do, or even just colleagues can do, to alleviate that pressure, to alleviate that, um, for that individual that might be facing that, or that you can start seeing those signs?
Yeah, I think, um, I mean, one thing is really just kind of more of an overall cultural thing in the workplace is creating an environment, and this can be done by a manager with her team, but creating an environment where everybody feels comfortable voicing opinions and speaking up and debating whether something is needed, and having that psychological safety, if you will, in the organization or the team, I think can really help. Because if I've seen this a lot where burnout is happening but nobody's talking about it,
Mhm.
and nobody's voicing, that, hey, can we take a step back, and I need some help figuring out how to stop doing some things that maybe don't need to be done. And but that takes a very yeah, that takes a very solid kind of culture, and making sure that people feel comfortable voicing that. So that's one that I can think of, that's really important, because those burnout signs, if you're a good manager, you really should be on the lookout for these and not assume that just because work is getting done, that employees, your team is, you know getting enough sleep and feeling, comfortable being at work, and feeling like they belong at work. And likely they're a retention risk if they're just burning the midnight oil and nobody really knows about it. So,
Well, and this is a good time too to leverage, HR. I know that, we're both in HR, and we talk a lot about setting up systems and operations and employee engagement programs. But I have I have yet to meet an HR individual that is not up to the task to step in and help with initiatives to help fight and combat burnout. And I think it's important too that when you see a top performer that is, like we were saying, are they a top performer, or is it a burnout? When you're seeing that person go, go, go for this long, we're all human beings, so there's gonna be that dip in something. You can only sustain so much without downtime, or without any kind of relief for so long before you go nuts. And so I think for leadership to engage with HR and collaborate with what kind of initiatives can we set, so that way when this does happen, or we can even get in front of it for any employee, whether they're top performer or not, that we can stop this before it happens, or help them, or give some kind of outlet for them to, do X, Y, and Z.
yes, yeah. And I'm sure you've been in positions where you felt burnout. I certainly have. And
Yeah.
sometimes it is just you feel like you're just churning
Alone.
and just alone, and
Yeah.
fine, I'll get this done, I'll do it. But, I'm also thinking about other things and wanting to do something different. So yes, I think it's, nobody's, it impacts everybody, and I'm sure everybody's felt it at some point.
Yeah, and there's
Um,
no reason to have to white knuckle it on your own, and I think, like, with our last episode that we talked about with employee engagement programs, I think that is why they are so important, to enrich
yes.
employee experience, to help with professional development. If you if you are continuously promoting those things for your employees, for your workforce, the burnout level, just it's almost non-existent.
Yes, and instead of just continuing to give those high performers more work, it's really understanding, to your point about our last episode, it's really understanding kind of what they want out of their career. What are some opportunities that they can kind of grow and develop in places that they're interested in, and the work that they want to do, and kind of giving them that exposure. Something that I've seen great leaders do and I really love is kind of a stop, start, continue exercise with workload, and taking a pause kind of on a regular basis with your team and saying, okay, what do you think we should stop doing collectively? Like, what are we doing today that is not adding any value? It's mainly busy work. There are things that it's just churning taking a lot of time and we're not getting a lot of impact, let's stop doing that. Like, are there things that we can just stop doing altogether to take off your plate? And then the things that we should start doing and focus more time on, and continue doing that we're doing today and it's working well. So those types of conversations I think are really important when it comes to burnout, to work as a team. If you're a leader or manager, kind of have those conversations with your direct reports and help take things off their plate. By often there's just a lot of work out there that doesn't really need to be done when you take a step back and think about it, or it could be pushed to next month, or kind of deprioritized or delegated to somebody else. So those types of things
The
strong
delegating.
leaders do on a regular basis.
The delegating was the key phrase there, I think. A lot of times with top performers is they tend to be those real type A.
Mhm.
Um, Only I can do it. I'm the best one that can do it. I wanna do it. I need to get ahead so I can show myself and everyone else that I'm the greatest that's ever done it. And a lot of times we find that, dude, if you just delegated X, Y, and Z, like, your life would get substantially better. And that's not to say that you can't do it or that you shouldn't do it. It's just that your skill set or your attention and energy could be spent doing other things rather than this. So I think learning to delegate and even doing trainings, and you can do a lot of those that aren't they're inexpensive. You can just do an internal training on how do we delegate? What systems and processes do we have in place where if we get overloaded, how can we delegate these tasks to a different team, or maybe we outsource this one, or to whatever that is, and that'll also help with the team collaboration and alleviate some of that burnout.
Yeah, and a couple of questions too that I think are good questions to ask for any of you managers, leaders out there. Ask your teams is, what's energizing you right now? Because and then what's draining you? What's giving you energy and what's draining you? And I think that can be pretty telling in where things might need a shift, or where some of those red flags might be when it comes to burnout. And then I also think, tying back to another episode we did around kind of, now I can't remember the name of the episode, but the management sort of, how managers should model behavior,
Mhm.
and that this is one of those areas where, you know modeling healthy boundaries is really important. So if you're a leader in an organization, make sure that you're modeling boundaries too, and sharing with your team that, you know it's important to take breaks, and it's important to take care of yourself, and not just talk about it, but really do it yourselves too, is important.
Yeah, I think it was that double standard,
Double standard, that's
the
right.
double standard one. So it's like, yeah, my boss is going out golfing he's relaxed and as cool as a cucumber because he gets to go golfing every Friday while we're stuck here, on a nice day, doing whatever it is that we're doing and, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So yes, I would agree with that as well. Really quick, because I know we have short time here. Um, Thoughts on if you're seeing that your team is stretched too thin as far as timing is concerned, that they're working longer hours, how do you combat that? What is one thing specifically that leaders can look at and do to help with time management so they're not burning the midnight oil?
I think the constant communication is just super important, and the transparency, and that exercise of what can we stop doing together? What can we agree that you can stop doing? I think that's important too. But really, if you have good relationships there and have that open communication and have teams feeling comfortable with talking about the workload and where they need help, that's key. So making sure that you're kind of creating that environment where the team feels comfortable talking about it, and then working together on solutions on how we can kind of reevaluate workload, stop doing some things, delegate some things. I think those are easy fixes.
Perfect. All right. Well, that does it for this week. Next week, we're talking about meetings, how to keep the meat of the meeting without overcooking it. So you're going to want to tune into that one. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you next time.
Great. Bye.